Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Emily Ann Ball, and I'm the Executive Director of Resilient Georgia. Thank you for being here this morning. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I thought I'd just share a little bit about Resilient Georgia. Our mission, our long-term mission, is to create an integrated behavioral health care system for Georgia by making Georgia a trauma-informed state. So this morning, if you've been to our past general meetings, we're focusing on innovative and best practices across the state that have to do with young adults' mental health. So specifically 18 or 19 to 26-year-olds and what different groups are doing. We'll hear from some young adults as well today, and we're very excited to have all of you here. If you were forwarded this invite and are not on our listserv, as soon as you go to our website, a pop-up will ask you to join and be part of our newsletters. You'll also get invites to all of our general meetings going forward. So please head over to resilientgeorgia.org, resilientga.org. So to get started today, we thought we would do a little activity and get you thinking back to when you were a young adult. So think back to when you were that age, 19 to 26, and we're going to do a chat bomb. So we've done this in other meetings when everybody kind of puts something in the chat all at once. So if you would think back to that age, and some of you are still there, so you can just think in real time. But imagine yourself when you were 19 to 26, and we wanted to ask you what your most unique, it could be least favorite or most favorite job was at that point. So for example, mine was I sold snow cones on the beach when I lived in Tampa in grad school, and that was my kind of most fun, unique job. So in the next 10 seconds, we would love for you to introduce yourself and put your most fun job as a young adult in the chat, and we'll get started in just a second. Swim instructor, a ballet performer, vet tech, teaching children, tutor, camp counselor, Publix. I had lots of friends that worked at Publix when I was young. Tutor. These are great. So hopefully this will be some entertainment to get our meeting started and get you back into this space when you were a young adult. So we are going to get started today. We're going to hear from Dr. Juanita Hicks, who's the Vice Chancellor of Human Resources and Mental Health and the Mental Health Task Force Project sponsor at the University System of Georgia, and Dr. Chip Reese, who is the Mental Health Task Force Project Director from the University System of Georgia and the Associate Vice President for Student Affairs at Columbus State University. They've been working hard with the University System of Georgia's Mental Health Task Force over the past couple years, and we're very excited to hear a little bit more about their work today.
Well, good morning, Emily. Thank you for that. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Good deal. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Dr. Hicks won't be able to join us as the Vice Chancellor. Many times she gets pulled in several different directions. And so I'm here representing her and the 340,000 students that we have in the University System of Georgia. And when I look at the intro that you guys had there about the 19 to 26-year-old, wow, that's where we live every day. And we have some non-traditional students, and that's a nice way of saying we got old people that go to school too, and a lot of graduate programs, doctoral programs, and such. But really, the bulk of what we do every day is that 19 to 26-year-old student. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I think I sent some slides over to you. Just a couple. There we go. Perfect. And so it's what has happened in the University System of Georgia over the last couple of years. And I'm going to talk in COVID world and pre-COVID world a little bit, and we're in that kind of semi-COVID. Now we're still very, very concerned about what's going on, but we're back on campuses. But in pre-COVID, our Student Government Association presidents, we have a group, and they're called SAC, it's the Student Advisory Committee, and they come together several times a year. And over several years in discussion and then getting in front of the chancellor, they said that we really feel like that we need to expand mental health resources on our campus in some degree. The waiting times in our counseling centers are getting long. Students are getting to where they would like to see more virtual type options and such. So we started a task force, and I believe the task force, it seems like the task force started in 2019, and I was a part of that task force, and we were, as many of you, I think you'll understand what I'm saying here, as the task force, we were supposed to look at what we had going on. We were supposed to improve services, expand services, and do it all with no new resources. Now, y'all have probably never heard of anything like that before, but that was kind of our job, is how can we cooperate with one another across campus lines? How can we look out into our communities? How can we see what's available and do a better job? But we just didn't have any resources available. About the time we really got started good and started bringing some recommendations to the table for consideration, this is when COVID hit all of us. And it pushed us all back to our campuses, and as far as well, say back to our campuses as far as work goes, but really back to home, our students as well, and again, you guys also. Through that process over the next few months, the governor released what they call GEAR, the Government's Emergency Education Relief Act, and much of it was federal dollars that it came down, and so what we call GEAR 1 now was released in August of 2020. And so we went from being a task force, we moved, brought some new people on, and we created the mental health initiative, because the task force was investigations, and then initiative, we were actually, at that point, we were doing things. We received $11.5 million from the governor's office to improve mental health, to really attack what's going on with COVID on our campuses from a mental health standpoint. And so, what the circle that you see here, this is the basic structure that we came up with. We wanted to improve clinical support. We needed some long-term strategic planning, which was the task force was already a part of, and then the campus mini grants, because you go from the University of Georgia with 30-something thousand students and a pretty good city around it with resources, down to maybe South Georgia College in Douglas that really doesn't have much of a community around it as far as resource availability, and on-campus resources were different. So our campus mini grants were trying to help each institution develop a little bit maybe of what they need particularly, and then central administrative support. So I'm on full-time loan right now to the system office. This is all I do all day, is a mental health initiative. If we can move on to the next slide, you'll see as we go into the next slide, you'll see I'm staying with the basic focus areas that we have, but then I'm going to explain a little bit about each one. So the clinical support, we partnered with a group called Christie Campus Health. Some of you may be familiar with the Mary Christie Foundation, who does a lot of research, has annual conferences and such. Well, Christie Campus Health is partnered with them. They are part of the same organization, and they help us deliver services to our students. So if you think about our campus counseling centers, this is an extension of, it would be like just adding more personnel to every counseling center that we had, but all of it is really done virtually. We were able to expand telepsychiatric care. Many of our students need to be assessed and maybe need medication for ADHD medication, things along those lines, and you have to have a prescription written for that. So we have psychiatric nurses and a psychiatrist that works with students in writing prescriptions and such. And if our students are coming from out of state and coming to Georgia, well, sometimes that doesn't translate over across state lines. They have to have somebody in Georgia, writing that for them. We also set up a 24/7 crisis hotline so that all of our 340,000 students, they have somebody to talk to at 2 o'clock in the morning if they need to. Many of our schools had something like that set up. But most of the time it was a counselor on call. So we would be waking up somebody in the counseling center. And then you see this job aid agreement. Well, you call into the 24/7 line, and if the campus feels like we need to wake somebody up on campus who's close by to see the student, we need to call campus police. So it's a very cooperative effort in extending these services out. Along with this comes some well-being services, also virtual counseling. Each student is in the university system now is allowed up to 5 virtual sessions with a licensed professional mental health individual to talk through it, whatever issue that they have. And that's 5 sessions per issue. So it's not 5 sessions a year, 5 sessions a semester, but 5 sessions per issue that they may have. So we really expanded those services there. But we also knew that when this grant money goes away, Gear 1, and now we've been afforded Gear 2 for an extension of that, when that goes away, that grant money, well, these services will start disappearing if we don't figure out a way to move forward. So we've also partnered with JED, with the JED Foundation, and in particular a subsidiary of theirs, JED Campus, for short-term and long-term strategic planning. So we're helping develop strategic planning on our campuses within the strategic planning phases of each university so that we can have really efficient and effective long-term answers. And it may be just as simple as on every single syllabus that each student gets, here's the contact information for the counseling center. Here is a web address for information or the telephone number to the 24/7 hotline. So how is it that we can put this out and reducing stigma and making access more readily available to our students? Utilizing Instagram and chat features and email, whatever it is that we can do. And then I mentioned the mini grants that you see down there for new technology. Some of our campuses, they didn't have webcams. So how are they going to do virtual counseling sessions with their counseling center if they don't have webcams? Others needed some other type of technology. But what we found is, you move to the next slide, what we really found was that most of our campuses said, we need training. 60% of the money, we put about $1.2 million into the mini grants for all the 26 institutions. Most of that money went into training. Our faculty, our staff, and our students said, what do we do if we think that one of our friends or one of our students is having difficulty? How do we get them to the right place? How do I start that conversation? And so you see some of the logos and such that we have here. So one of the things that we started was QPR, and I hope that you're familiar with Question, Persuade, and Refer, a suicide prevention program. And so we initiated QPR. Many of our schools did that in their mini grants, but through also we've got several master's level and doctoral level students at the University of Georgia that are trained in delivering this training as well. And I want to say to date, because the numbers change every day, we're training more and more people. But we've trained about 200, 250 trainers that are out there on our campuses so they can deliver this training. And we're, I'm going to, don't hold me to this number again, because it changes quite a bit. Let me see if I have it up here on my, in my little notes somewhere. Try to give you the best guess as I possibly can. Let's see, I don't have that number, but I'm going to say we've got about 2,500, approaching 3,000 individuals that we have trained as QPR gatekeepers. And each week we're offering up to 30 sessions virtually of getting individuals trained in QPR. Another thing that we're doing is mental health first aid. And if any of you have taken that course, it's a little bit more extensive. The QPR Gatekeeper is about an hour and a half type session. The mental health first aid, it's really a full day commitment, but it's a much deeper approach, and maybe for some directors and maybe residence life individuals that have a lot of contact with students. The mental health first aid program is a great program as well. You see up there with the Georgia Law Enforcement at Columbus State University, the Command College. Through Command College, we initiated a program called the Quiet Cop, and we train the leadership chiefs, assistant chiefs, individuals on campus. We train these individuals with how they can work with their staff, with their officers on the ground, of being more approachable, being softer in mental health type situations, to where they're not coming in. We know that they're the police and that they do police work, but how can they be approachable? Part of that approachability, you see the little, the yellow, or excuse me, the green ribbon with the badge. officers that had gone through QPR and mental health first training, and we're getting a pretty good bit of those now. They're going to get one of these lapel pins that indicates that they have been through both of those trainings. Right now, every one of our police departments on our campus, all 26 institutions, they have a QPR trainer on staff in their police department. And just about every one of our police officers, almost at 100%, has gone through at least QPR training. And a good handful have been through mental health first aid as well. University of Georgia has been fantastic for us. We had a mental health summit that we had this past fall. Again, all 26 institutions came together for a 2-day event, bringing awareness. This was faculty, staff, students, and it was a great event. And we're continuing those conversations with some more smaller types of trainings and such with individual groups. Like, again, the Chiefs Association is doing another training event. The deans of students and student conduct officers have another event on April 1st. I was on the phone this morning with the African American Male Initiative group out of Atlanta that's going to be doing another training at the first of the summer. So we're continuing this summit and really a focus of mental health on our campus. Georgia Southern hosted a virtual suicide prevention conference that was attended by just about every one of our campuses and had close to 500 people in attendance for that as well. And then you see NBITA and ATICSA. NBITA is National Behavior Intervention Teams Association. Individuals, this came really from Virginia Tech. That's where it all really started, was the idea of safety on campus. And if we can catch somebody softly in that net early on that may be struggling, where they may be thinking of harming themselves or harming other individuals, and get them back on track to be successful. ATICSA, the Title IX Association, we've got training coming up this spring. Again, as individuals are going through, either as the complainant or the respondent or a witness, or even the people that are working as officers and investigators in secondary trauma that affects those individuals. We're going to be talking about, how do we ensure that individuals that are going through this process have the support and have the availability to mental health resources that they need as well. So we're doing a lot. We continue to do a lot. Gear 2 is going to help us extend our services out for another year. And then JED is going to help us with that long-term strategic planning of making sure that these services don't go away when the soft money goes away. So we're working very, very hard at trying to make sure that happens for all of us. I'm going to hang around as long as y'all want me to hang around. Some really cool things are happening at the University System of Georgia. I'm glad to talk about it. I mean, I could talk for hours on this stuff. It's really, really cool. But thank you for having me, and thank you for the good work that you guys are doing as well. We really appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the beginning, but we will be sending a follow-up document. So keep your questions coming in the chat, and we'll make sure we get those questions to all of our wonderful presenters and get you some resources and answers to that. Next, we're going to hear from the Student Task Force on ACEs and Resilience, where their acronym is STAR, and we're very proud of the work that they've been doing. We've been working with them since Resilient Georgia was birthed. We'll hear from Charlie Lane, who's the co-president and an MD candidate at Emory University School of Medicine, and Eudora Olson, who is the other co-president, also an MD candidate, and also from Emory University School of Medicine.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Unfortunately, Eudora won't be able to join us, but yeah, just grateful to be here and grateful to be a part of Resilient Georgia. And I just wanted to kind of give the perspectives on mental health from young professionals and a little bit about what STAR is and how you can get involved if you'd like. So just moving forward through a couple slides here. So this is our outline, and we can go on to the next one, please. And so what is STAR? We are a student task force for ACEs and Resilience, and we are an interdisciplinary group of young professionals from across Georgia and really the nation that's dedicated to increasing awareness and providing resources for our communities on trauma-informed care practices. And we're trying to leverage these pillars of education, advocacy, service, and research. Education side, we've been teaching a lot of classes to health professionals and health students who we really need to raise our awareness on the impact of adverse childhood events and the importance of fostering resilience. And then as far as a young professional perspective, I want to talk a little bit, since we are mostly health students, a few law students, some public health students, but we are really kind of on the front lines of care. And so there's a lot of issues with mental health when we get that intimate with suffering. And Dr. Reese already kind of mentioned this idea of secondary traumatic stress. And that's really this evolving notion. We've talked about vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue and moral suffering. And we don't really have a specific name to call it yet, but it's been studied for decades. Just when you are on the front lines of care, that veil between self and other is very thin. And if we over empathize with someone else's suffering, start to see it as our own, then we can ourselves start to suffer and feel that pain. And this has been really studied well. And there's now even just immense amounts of burnout in our communities. And this Great Recession is continuing. It was already happening kind of before the COVID pandemic, and it's just been compounded. And burnout is this complex notion that has to do with exhaustion, depersonalization, and inefficacy. And those are all things that contribute to burnout and can be the result of burnout. When we talk about exhaustion, we think emotional and physical exhaustion of just long work hours. Depersonalization is really a tricky one, because when we are on the front lines caring for those who are suffering, it's really important that we empathize with them so that we can understand where they're coming from, see how they may be suffering, and be there for them as a fellow human being. But again, if that veil, that differentiation between self and other breaks down a little too much, then we can fall into what's called empathic distress. And so to guard from that, many people actually start to depersonalize and pull back from those relationships with their patients and with their colleagues. The career that was once a calling and a profession starts to become more of a job and something that you don't want to wake up and go in and do. And it is a vicious circle. And this inefficacy is really tricky in that we often feel like we are not effective in those front lines. And the recent estimates say that about 70% of providers or really high performing professionals experience something called imposter phenomenon or imposter syndrome, and this sense that we really don't have the skills that we need, or that we don't have the knowledge, or that we're not prepared for this. Yeah, thanks. Somehow that got mixed around, but actually, if you want to go back one more, we've got these two photos, and I just want to talk a little bit more about what's actually happening on the front lines, especially once COVID came up. There was a lot of distress amongst my colleagues and peers. And it was each year in each class, I can only really speak from the MD perspective, students, but each class in each year had their own unique challenges. The new incoming students never had the opportunity to bond with their classmates. And so this important social cohesion that's so crucial to our sense of self and really ability to survive within the medical training was really degraded. For the M2s who were already in a class, they got pulled out and started to wonder what was going to happen to their education. I was an M3, so we actually started on the wards, and then we had to get pulled back because we needed to preserve PPE for the frontline providers. And then once we were able to get back on the front lines, we had to question whether our education, where it falls in lines of priority. Shouldn't we be prioritizing those who are already on the front lines and can provide help? Maybe we should wait until things settle down a little bit. So it really created a lot of angst amongst people. And on top of that, we were being taught, and our role models are a force of providers who are overwhelmingly burnt out. And recent estimates say upwards of 50% of health professionals experience professional burnout, which the World Health Organization acknowledges as an occupational hazard. I know at one point this was in the DSM, right? But this is not an individual failure. This is a problem of the systems that we work within. And so I think a lot of questioning about where we fit in this system and what we can do. And so Emory, I can speak again to Emory's side of things, did a great job of responding with some interventions during COVID and beyond and before. And we had the counseling and psychological services has these consultations and stress clinics and all sorts of things that reach out to different affinity groups and really met the needs of our community. But what I've found for a lot of these mental health resources, regardless of the school you're at, you really have to be in the know of what's out there and how to get plugged into these different resources. And maybe even more crucial is in the know with yourself and what resources you need and what would actually help you if you are struggling. And that's a much bigger ask for each individual. But if you just open yourself up, you'll see that all these universities have these resources out there. And I saw something in the question about whether or not these resources are out there that Dr. Reese was talking about, but people struggle to get into them. And I think, again, you have to recognize what you need. So one day I was just walking around campus and looked at what was available. And I found this next image that will come up of a stress management clinic that if you wanted to, you could reach out to. And in the bathroom in another building, again, if you click to the next slide, there's a picture of a helpline. So these resources are out there. But again, it's about knowing what's out there, knowing how to get involved, and knowing what you need. And so I can share something that helped for me. At Emory, they have the Compassion Center, the Center for Contemplative Sciences and Compassion-Based Ethics. So if you go to compassion.emory.edu, there's all sorts of training. And I've actually gotten certified as a cognitively based compassion training instructor. And this is an 8-module course that takes you with how to grow your compassion. And what we've found in studies is that when we over-empathize with someone and fall into that empathic distress, that there's another path we can take of just recognizing our own limitations, recognizing that we are human, that we can't solve all of the world's problems or even all the problems of this one person in front of us or our colleagues. But if we recognize what is within our control, what we can do, it helps us tap into this compassion network, which is more associated with pro-social motivation, positive affect, and it shows benefits for those practicing compassion and those who are receiving compassion. So this program has really been helpful for me to think about all the moral suffering from moral injury, moral distress, moral outrage, and moral apathy that can occur on these front lines of care. And there's so lots of great resources at compassion.emory.edu if you're interested. And so as I'm nearing the end here, I just want to talk about STAR a little bit more and how you can connect if interested. We have hosted in the past 2 years a trauma-informed care conference where we bring together all sorts of professionals and try and raise awareness about trauma-informed care practices. And I just want to throw something else into the mix here about trauma informed. I think oftentimes when we mention something as being trauma informed, the immediate reaction is, oh, trauma informed care, but we can really make anything trauma informed, including our medical education or any kind of training. And so when we are learning about suffering, that opens us up to a secondary stressor, to a re-traumatization. And so there are ways that we can go about introducing students and teaching them about the suffering of others and themselves in a way that it doesn't re-traumatize them. And so that's our hope, is to create a more trauma-informed training. So the next one for 2022 is coming up October 22nd and 23rd. And again, it's a 2-day event. We've had 25 plus speakers with workshops and all sorts of great lectures. And if you are interested in attending or presenting, please take a look at this QR code. Actually, let me put it's just a Google form. I can put it in the chat also. And if you are interested, please reach out. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's the link I was just looking at.
Thank you so much, Charlie. We're so impressed with all the work you're doing and appreciative, and especially I've been amazed over the last couple of years seeing how much work you accomplish while you're in medical school. It's very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, and great to be with Resilient Georgia. It's really been wonderful to see all that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. So next we're going to hear from Youth Villages LifeSet. Tanya Anderson is their executive director, and Jamita Wheeler is the assistant director, and she's over community-based programs.
Good morning, and thanks again, Emily, for the invitation to be able to present and share about Youth Villages and the LifeSet program that we're operating here in Georgia. As Emily's mentioned, I'm the executive director for all of our Youth Villages operations here in the state. And currently we're operating 3 programs. One is residential in Douglasville, Georgia, and the other 2 programs are community-based programs serving Metro Atlanta and surrounding counties. One community-based model is called LifeSet, and it focuses on intensive in-home services for children and families that are currently in foster care. And then the second community-based program that we offer here in the state is called LifeSet. And LifeSet is a program that focuses on serving emerging young adults who are moving into independence and really need guidance and support to be successful as they're moving throughout life. As an organization, Youth Villages started out in 1986 in Memphis, Tennessee, and over the years we've expanded nationally. So we're currently in 23 states and also the District of Columbia. We expanded here in the state of Georgia in 2008, and the expansion started with community-based services before we merged with our residential program here in Douglasville. LifeSet is one of those programs that when we started with the expansion, we offered it on more of a demonstration model. So we funded LifeSet through national philanthropic dollars just to sort of grow the education and the insight about the program, and also to learn more about what the needs may have been for the state of Georgia for this particular population. And then in 2020, we were able to really launch more partnerships for entities and partners that felt like they could benefit from Youth Villages services as it relates to LifeSet. Currently, LifeSet partners we have here in the state are AmeriGroup 360. So those that are transitioning out of foster care, and then also with DBHGD. So those young adults who may be in transition and they are currently underinsured or uninsured. And the LifeSet program really focuses on traditionally those that are 17 and a half through 22. But with each of our partners, the focus and the goal really is to align the need with their particular population. So we are always very open with regards to how they want to expand the age range and how they want to utilize LifeSet services to ensure that their members are successful as they're transitioning into young adulthood. We like to use the metaphor of a bridge when we refer to LifeSet services, and it really serves as that. Those individuals that have had the unfortunate experience of being involved with foster care, juvenile justice, or other forms of mental health systems, when they're merging into young adulthood, sometimes you don't always have the support system or the guidance. And that's what LifeSet does, and that's what the specialists will do. We focus on social determinants of health factors. So as you can see in the image on this particular slide, we are focusing on all the things that nationally have been indicators of those that are moving into young adulthood and their long-term success. So whether it's overall well-being, housing, career and employment, education, life skills, and healthy relationships with individuals. So that's kind of the overall framework of the bridge for LifeSet services and serving those that are moving into young adulthood. I'm going to pass it off to Jamita, who operates our Georgia programs directly, and she's going to give a little bit of a drill down of how we deliver LifeSet services here in the state of Georgia. And you can move to the next slide. Perfect.
Emily, if you'll go back to the last slide, because I'm actually going to use the bridge as walking through a real life story of how we've helped one of our adults, young adults in the program. But again, my name is Jamita Wheeler. It's wonderful to be here with everyone today and to share more about our LifeSet program and to learn a lot about what you guys are also doing in the state of Georgia. So it's great to be here with everyone. So I want to just share a success story that we've had with one of our young adults that came to us at the age of 2 weeks before he turned 18. And his caregiver at the time told us when we received the referral, he can no longer remain in my home and he has to go at the age of 18 because of his behaviors. They are no longer welcome, which was difficult for us because it was on the front end of us getting our contract and starting up services. And we were faced with having to initially find housing for this young adult who was put out of his home that he'd been in for years at the age of 18. So as we look at the bridge, I'm going to just talk through different components that we were able to help him meet his goals and the immediate goals that he had as he worked through this program. So of course, the housing piece was a huge component that we had to address early on. We had to get him in a shelter because there were not other options for him at that time. And we got him into one shelter. The behaviors that mom I mentioned she had concerns about begin to surface. And he had some concerns of physical aggression with another client in the shelter. We got a call in the middle of the night and they said, you got to come pick him up. He can no longer stay here. So we had to transition him to another shelter. And we work with the Covenant House. We work with Lost and Found and different agencies that we partner with to really try to help us with finding immediate housing for these young adults as we look for more permanent and stable housing. The Covenant House was able to take him in and we were able to stabilize him there. And at the same time, he was in high school, not doing well in school, but he wanted to graduate. He was off track. So our specialist was able to get with his counselors and administration at the school, get him caught up on his goals and get him on track for graduating from high school. About 3 months before he graduated, he said, hey, I think I want to go to college. I want to try this college thing. That was not in his plan prior to him coming into services with us. When we were able to explore, what do you want to do? This was one of the things he said, I want to try it. So we then focused on college and getting him applications for different colleges, paying for different applications, getting him actually accepted and enrolled into college. So that met three of his goals actually. He completed high school successfully. He was able to graduate from high school. He was able to get into college, and it met his housing goal as well because he's staying on campus during the time that he's in college. So we were able to meet several of those goals. Also the mental and physical health piece. He came to us with several mental health diagnoses. He was on medication and was not consistently taking his medications. So we helped educate him on the importance of that. He had never had to get his medications refilled on his own. We took him to his doctor's appointments, made sure that he was able to meet those appointments and get his medications and manage those things. So that mental health and physical health piece, which plays a huge part into all of his success, we were able to work with him on that as well. And then the relational permanency, as I mentioned on the front end, he got into altercations in his first placement, and we had to help educate him on the importance of having positive relationships, maintaining those relationships so that you don't break down all of your support. And so we worked on that piece as well, along with multiple life skills, whether it was getting him a driver's license, whether it was helping him understand how to open a bank account. We worked with him on several different life skills as well. The only component with this young adult we weren't able to work on, which was not his goal, was the career and employment. So we focused on a lot of these things and were able to really help him through this bridge and meeting those goals. And you can go to the next slide because I think I actually covered 2 and 1. And so as you can see here, what our goals that we're working with the youth on are youth driven. And this is how it looks where the youth is in the driver's seat. We're kind of walking alongside them to help them meet their goals and meet whatever they identify as their goals for their future. We have our specialists who are supervised by clinical supervisors as well as licensed program experts that oversee all of the clinical direction of the services. And so our specialists are meeting with the youth a minimum of once a week, and they're on call to them 24/7. And here's just a brief breakdown of our outcomes. We did a randomized controlled trial. And with that, we were able to see that there was a decrease in mental health, a 13% decrease in mental health, a decrease in domestic partner violent relationships by 30%, which was huge for us. Homelessness was by 22%, and lack of hardship by 13%. Employment increased by 17%, and earnings increased by 7%. So that's just a quick, brief breakdown of how we provide services to the young adults that we serve in our LifeSet program.
Thank you so much, Jamita and Tanya. Your work is so impressive. And like I keep saying, if you have questions for any of our presenters, put them in the chat and we'll send a follow-up document to everyone after. So next we're going to hear, I think a lot of you, in some of the presentations already, we've heard a little bit about the community resiliency model. You probably see it on our social media quite a bit. One of our core partners has been using this model in Ukraine, which is wonderful. And you can find out more about that on our social media. And today we're going to hear from Anthony Clark and Bria Davis from the Covenant House. They're both community resiliency model instructors and are doing wonderful work.
All right. Hi. So I'm Bria Davis. I have been teaching CRIM for about going on 3 years this year. So it's been a whirlwind. But the entire time that I've been teaching it, I've been working with the Covenant House. And honestly, I've been using it for myself, for my own well-being in my work that I do. And I am a young person. I am 26. So it was a struggle at first trying to come out of college and find a job and not overwhelm myself with stress. And just being a part of the first CRIM class that I was a part of, I felt a difference. I felt that I had more control over my nervous system than I thought I did. I noticed more things about my body that made me feel more in tune with it. And that's what CRIM is about. It's about learning about your body and becoming more in tune with it so that you can use it when you're in stressful situations. And that's just my little introduction, Anthony.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, still morning. I was introduced to CRIM by Dr. Lindy, and I'm 23. I'm still in college. I'm at Georgia State right now. And I can definitely say that learning the, resilient zone model has absolutely influenced me. And teaching it has given me the opportunity to kind of watch people and see the impact that it's had. And it's super useful. So thanks for having us.
So we're going to start off by just explaining, for those who haven't had CRIM before, what our first key concept of the whole thing is, which is just the resilience zone. So Anthony will explain that part.
For sure. So the resilient zone, the idea behind it is sort of your current emotional state. And as you can see, there is a top to the resilient zone, and then there's a bottom line, and both lines are parallel, right? And so the concept is if you're severely stressed out, your emotional state can go really high, or it can go it can go low, right? If you're depressed or if you're sad in some way, if you feel isolated and things of that nature. And so what you want to do, I don't think I have control over these slides, so I don't think I can go forward. But, oh, okay, good. So yes, if there is like a traumatic or stressful event, it's going to trigger a response, right, in your nervous system that you can it's palpable, you can feel it. And so our goal is to try to get you to expand the zone. So move those lines higher and move those lines lower, not so that you can numb emotion, but more so that you have more control. And so you stay in your resiliency zone more often than not. And it's super simple and elementary sounding, but when you're dealing with, like, let's say homeless youth or something of that nature, it's supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be easily digestible. That's the idea behind it. And if you can imagine someone who's disadvantaged, for them, they're constantly approached with these more or less traumatic events. If you, let's say you missed the train or something like that, and that was your only job interview that you've got a call back from, if you live at home with your parents, no big deal. You can just try again in a month. If you live in a shelter and there's a 3-month period that you need to find a job, otherwise you don't have a place to live. Yeah, something like that is traumatic, and you want to make sure that you're in control. And so that's the use of the model.
Can we go back one more slide? And I just wanted to add on to the parts above and beyond that, like when your body encounters a stressful or traumatic event, basically it tries to prepare you for it by giving you energy or taking away energy, depending on what's appropriate for the event. But if it's too stressful, your body has a hard time figuring out how much energy to give you, or how little energy does it need to, how much needs to be taken away. And you can get stuck either in your high zone with your body giving you too much energy because it thinks you need it even when you don't, or you can get stuck in the low zone if your body takes all of that energy away just to deal with internal things. So high zone, when I explain this at the Covenant House, I explain it as high energy upset. So your body's giving you all this energy, and maybe you just have a phone call or a test or something that doesn't actually require you to move around or do something that'll get that energy out. So it just feels uncomfortable. You're sitting around feeling jittery. Maybe you feel irritable, anxiety. You might have angry outbursts, literal pain. It can cause night terrors or accidents. And obviously, we see a lot of temper tantrums too. On the other end, if your body doesn't give you that energy, you begin to feel it. There's something really upsetting about not being able to do what you need to do and your body not working with you. So if you don't have that energy to get out of bed, you can really set into depression or sadness, or start to isolate yourself, feel fatigued or exhausted all the time, or get to a point where you're numb or withdrawn, or just trying to feel something and you start clinging to other people for it. So all of the things that we talk about in CREM are sort of explaining situations that the youth at the Covenant House have probably already been in and have already experienced. We're trying to normalize the idea that these things happen to us, and it doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that we need more skills to work with our nervous system instead of trying to fight against it. So next slide. That's when we start getting into these skills. So the way that we work, we explain a whole lot of biology with CREM in a simplified form. But basically, when you're outside of your resilient zone, you have sensations are the main way that you're going to get back into your brain. It's the easiest part of your brain to understand what's going on. Your brain needs to know if you are in a safe place, and the only way it'll be able to do that is, what do you see? What do you touch? What do you smell? What do you hear? And sometimes, what do you taste? But that's more of a rare thing. So these help now skills that we have are quick sensory actions, things that help immediately target that part of your brain so that we can start noticing that we're not actually in a dangerous situation. It may be a situation that you just need to bring your brain back in order so that you can say the right words. You don't need to fight anyone or run or something like that. So these are simple skills, our help now skills that do that. So going for a walk, pushing up against a wall, and that we change these depending on who we're talking to. So if you've been justice involved, we wouldn't necessarily suggest that you push up against the wall facing that wall. But if it's more comfortable to you, why don't you try putting your back against the wall and pushing that way? That still uses more muscles and energy in your body to sort of tell your body which way you want it to go. So these are all simple things that we do in our classes to start to get the youth used to the idea of doing these more simple things in a response to stress, because a lot of times they don't understand why you're asking them to drink water or to count backwards. But if we start off the class with explaining your biology and how this helps your brain and how it helps your nervous system, they're more likely to do it. Right. So this was we weren't sure we were going to have time for this one, but this is one of our other skills that we teach in CREM, which is resourcing. It uses the part of your brain, basically your limbic area that holds all of your emotions and your memories, to remind yourself of pleasant things in your life that keep you going. So we talk about stories or people or places that we've been that we really enjoyed, and what were the detailed parts about that. And it can be real or imagined. So if you want, imagining the apartment that you're going to have, or the vacation that you could eventually afford. It can be internal or external, so something about yourself or something that someone else has done for you. So next slide. it's just about making sure that we're bringing these positive things in our life and recognizing that there are sensory parts to those experiences that can help us get back into our resilient zone. So everything we do in CRIM has to do with our senses. And that's basically how we explain what we do at the Covenant House. Let's see. Anthony, do you have anything else to add at the end of this?
I guess the only thing I would say about resourcing is like retreading what you said, just the concept of imagining your goals and visualizing your personal goals is super useful. And so when we're dealing with homeless youth, I find that resourcing is one of the more helpful strategies, because when you can't visualize your goal, I feel like you're a lot more likely to make mistakes and a lot more likely to lose control. So other than that, no, nothing to add.
Thank you both so much. And for those of you on the call that have not been to a CRIM training, I think all of us encourage you to take advantage. A lot of our regional partners are hosting them. We're working with Dr. Jordan Murphy quite a bit, and the Department of Behavioral Health they have a contract with Dr. Murphy, so there's ongoing trainings that you can take advantage of. There's hour versions and 3-hour versions, and I know the very first time I took the shorter 1-hour version, I created a post-it from the resourcing activity, and it still lives on my computer. I think, 2 years later. It's incredibly helpful. So thank you very much. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Nicholas Ledani. He's the new Oglethorpe president. We're super excited to have him here. He's a professor of psychology. Also, Dr. Michelle Lynn. She's a licensed psychologist and the director of the Counseling Center at Oglethorpe. And Dr. Meredith Raimondo. She is the vice president of student affairs at Oglethorpe. Dr. Ledani.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Emily and Neha, for having us. We're thrilled to be part of this series of presentations today. I feel like I'm learning a great deal. I'm Nick Ledani. I'm the relatively new, I guess now it's 2 years as the pandemic president. And my colleagues, Dr. Meredith Raimondo, who is our Vice President for Student Affairs, and Dr. Michelle Lynn, is Director of our Counseling Center, will be also presenting. I've been told I have 2 minutes, which I think as a president is really unfair, but I will go ahead and make sure that I do that. But our presentation today is really broadly going to talk about strategies for comprehensive mental health services on campus. And in my own view of mental health services in higher education comes from my background as a psychologist. I did come up through the academic ranks as a professor, but I also have worked in counseling centers at universities. Just real quickly about Oglethorpe, a lot of folks don't know some of the kind of unique facts about us. First is we have about 1,400 students. 60% of our students are students of color, and 40% of our students are first generation. So we have an outstanding student body, very diverse. It's one of our key priorities is to continue to strengthen our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But also I will say that another big push is to really look at holistic health services for our students with a specific focus on mental health. And for some time, it's been very clear to me that we can't address the academic success of students without first attending to their mental health needs. And to that end, we're really redesigning our mental health services on campus to offer unlimited services to our students. And I can tell you it's going to cost us less than if we didn't. I think there's been a big, I would say generally, I'll say something very provocative. I think that higher education has failed students in the realm of mental health. I think we need to do things differently, and we have some really cool things that we're trying to do to really enhance our services and address those needs. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleagues to talk about things from their perspectives.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Lynn. I'm the director of the Counseling Center at Oglethorpe. I'll start off and then pass it on to Dr. Raimondo. But I wanted to just mention a few trends that we're seeing here at Oglethorpe in terms of mental health. with our students. As we know, and it's already been mentioned today in our meeting, that demand for services for college mental health centers pre-pandemic was already high, and meeting the demand is even more difficult now in our current climate. So what we're seeing at Oglethorpe is a 52% increase in requests for new appointments, and that was in the fall of 2021 as students were returning back to campus. So it presented a unique opportunity to ask students in what ways they were affected negatively by the pandemic. So in polling students, we found that 78% of our students stated that their mental health was negatively affected by COVID-19. 73% stated that their loneliness and isolation, feelings of loneliness and isolation had increased. In addition, factors around motivation and focus, students were struggling with that at 67%, and students felt at a high degree at 58% that they had missed out on opportunities and experiences due to COVID-19. And finally, as President Ladani talked about, 53% of the students indicated that their academics had been negatively affected by COVID-19. So with this context, in me coming on board, thinking about ways that we could address what was already happening prior to the pandemic and then what we're seeing in the pandemic, it was really important to gather this data. Another trend that we're seeing is that 65% of the new students who have presented for services this year are either freshmen or sophomores. And so I've heard in other meetings on collegiate mental health and addressing the wellness of college students that we have this experience of 2 freshman classes. So the students who graduated from high school in 2020 and them not necessarily being able to matriculate onto college campuses are doing that in their sophomore year. So it's created what I've heard referred to as a froshmore experience. So we're finding that the majority of our students coming in for services are either freshmen or sophomores, and that upperclassmen are seeking services at a lower rate. So some of the innovative practices that we've begun with the team here, along with President Ladani and Dr. Raimondo, are to offer services in a hybrid model. So students do have the virtual option for their first appointment, but we're also extending in-person services to students once they've sort of established a relationship with a counselor and have that comfort level. And this offers more flexibility to students, for our commuter students, for our students of color, for our first generation students, to have access to services in the hybrid model. And we're supplementing our in-person services at the center with unlimited 24/7 availability for the virtual care group, and that offers them unlimited access to doctors, therapists, and on-demand crisis counselors. So a supplemental service to the counseling center, recognizing that with the demand of services and with the need to be flexible and offer a hybrid model, that we needed some support or additional options. So the virtual care group provides that in 100% telehealth, through 100% telehealth. Another innovation is to expand our training program. So thankfully here in the Atlanta area, there are several mental health programs. And so we're excited to be able to provide our center as a training site for students who are enrolled in various graduate programs in the area. And hopefully down the road, we can expand that to having a postdoctoral fellow here in the center. And we see this as an important aspect of community outreach to build relationships with other campuses, and at the same time extend more service capacity to our students. And then finally, with the same theme of community outreach, we're working with Skyland Trail, which is a comprehensive residential treatment facility in our area that provides services to young adults. So we're working with them to see how we can collaborate with training opportunities, mutual training opportunities, and mutual service delivery opportunities to their clientele as well as our students. So those are some things that we're doing here. And I'll pass it off to Dr. Raimondo.
Thank you so much. And it's Great to see everyone here today and hear such inspiring stories. So I'm just going to put a really brief gloss on what Dr. Ladani and Dr. Lin have shared, and note that from a student affairs perspective in higher education, this is the #1 issue. Student mental health is the #1 issue that gets discussed at our meetings, and the #1 challenge that I think is unresolved. And so one of the things that I want to say that I think is critically important is that our institutions invest in robust clinical services and recognize that we cannot staff our way out of this challenge. And so when you go to meetings and you hear the wealthiest schools in the nation saying they can't afford to hire enough counselors, it leaves those of us with fewer resources and potentially more vulnerable students, I think, really facing the challenge head on to say that this has to be a comprehensive institution-wide effort and not just something that's left to our practitioners, although making sure they're adequately resourced is a key element of success. So we are supporting our clinical services at Oglethorpe with a robust student wellness program, trying to think comprehensively about how do we, and so I feel really honored to just follow the last couple of presentations, how do we promote resilience and how do we reduce the stressors that may cause students to develop more acute experiences of anxiety and depression, which are the two major things that we're seeing on college campuses, although it's also worth noting that more students are coming to campus with very serious psychiatric diagnoses and really, I think, challenging the way our accessibility offices have thought about their work. The wellness programs really take a structural determinants of health perspective and try to offer a wide range of opportunities. We are also significantly about 40% commuter students, so we have to have sort of ready, meet students where they are in order to successfully provide things like stress reduction activities, hands-on opportunities to engage in crafts for 5 minutes or do other kinds of activities that I think promote that resilience work we just heard about in the other presentation. We're also thinking about ways to promote social connectedness, and I'll say more about that in a second. This is layered with advising around key stressors, including things like financial pressures, academic stress, and interpersonal challenges. And really, I see the goal that we're trying to cultivate at the college is stewarding an environment that provides students with the opportunities to stretch, to fail, to recover, and to develop resilience as they do so. So it's in some ways about promoting opportunities for the healthy kinds of stress while helping students manage the stress that can be more challenging. And I think key to that is a robust co-curricular environment that helps students develop meaningful relationships with faculty, staff, and peers. That is even more important today because of the number of mental health challenges our students are reporting and the ways that those have been exacerbated by COVID. The challenge for any campus is how to scale those kinds of relationship building efforts. And I think it's no less true at a 1,400 person campus than it is for our colleagues in the Georgia State system. How do we create programs that help students build that network of relationships around them? I think it's important to say out loud that COVID really fractured people's support networks, and that one of the things we have to invest in as intentional communities, which is what I see a university as, is ways to help people rebuild support networks in new and instructive ways. And then finally, I want to say that as we're thinking about mental health and well-being from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, I want to say that we also have to think about the connections between our institutions and the outside world. So the idea of an ivory tower or some kind of isolated bubble on university campuses is less true than ever. I'm not sure it ever was true, but I think when we think about the other challenges of the last couple of years, debates about immigration and DACA, debates about Black Lives Matter and anti-Black racism, those issues are having an enormous impact on student populations in obviously deeply unequal ways. But to imagine that those issues can be shut out from their life and their experiences as students is profoundly naive, I think. And so creating spaces on our campus to really promote ways for students to process the historical moment they're in and understand what it means to live and thrive in a world beset with challenges, I think is the challenge that we're trying to take on, and one that I think as a sector, we really are embracing. So thank you, everyone. It's really been great to join you today.
Thank you all so much. It's wonderful to hear about all of your efforts, and we're so excited. I know at least 2 of you are new to Georgia, so we're happy that you're here. Next, we're going to hear from Mental Health America of Georgia and the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, of Georgia. And I've had the pleasure of working closely with Miriam Goodfriend and Madison Scott, who are both advocacy coordinators and director of development at those 2 organizations a lot lately. They've been really leading a lot of the work with the Georgia Mental Health Policy Partnership. So Madison and Miriam, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Emily. I'll go ahead and kick us off. Hey everyone, my name is Madison Scott. Yes, like Emily said, I am the Director of Development at Mental Health America of Georgia, but I'm also heavily in the policy space there. So I can give you a little bit of background. I am originally from Atlanta, and so I grew up from Georgia, but I went to school up in North Carolina. So I was at UNC for undergrad as well as law school, which I finished in May of last year. And then upon finishing law school, and kind of right before finishing, I was able to come on to Mental Health America of Georgia at the time that Jewel Gooding, actually, who I believe is here today and about to go after us, was the executive director. And I'm lucky to have her hire me and bring me on into this space. So I've been working in the past year kind of in the nonprofit in a general sense, but really working on this Mental Health Parity Act and, like Emily said, the Georgia Mental Health Policy Partnership. So I'll let Miriam introduce herself and then we can get started.
Thanks, Madison. Hi, everyone. I'm Miriam Goodfriend, as they said. I work as the Advocacy Coordinator for Nami, Georgia. In this past legislative session that's been happening right now, that means a lot of grassroots outreach. Actually, one of my biggest jobs is to reach out to partners and organizations like Resilient Georgia and work with people like Emily and the Georgia Mental Health Policy Partnership to really rally everybody behind these policy changes that we're seeing as we sit here and talk about what our organizations need and the gaps. We look to use that info and that data to go and educate the legislators and ask them for the resources and the funding, and also just the general education that we need here in Georgia to end the stigma. I also grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I love it here. I am currently getting my master's at Georgia State in public administration. So I'm just excited to continue to work on this and present to you guys a little bit more about what we're doing. So I'll start off, we'll talk a little bit about the bill. I'm sorry we don't have any fancy slides, but right now we are talking about the Mental Health Parity Act, and it has 5 parts. And so one of my favorite things about working for an organization like NAMI is that we're looking at a multi-level approach to diversify our strategy on how we want to improve the system. So instead of picking out one part and chipping away, we want to totally reform and overhaul all of the parts that cause barriers to access to care. So we work very closely with the law enforcement to reduce use of force and to divert to treatment. We've spoken with hospitals, specifically children's, and they actually showed us that 70 children were repeatedly going into the ER. This is their data from the last year. 4 times or more, which we are looking in the bill to find how we can allow our law enforcement and our mental health co-responders to get children the care they need. And also our biggest push is for parity in insurance, which means that we will have our mental health coverage covered the same as our physical care. So that also helps end stigmatization, because what we see a lot is that our parents and children aren't getting the care they need simply due to education or lack of services. Our workforce has serious gaps. Out of the 159 Georgia counties, we have 78 counties that don't have a psychologist, 53 counties that don't have a social worker, and 45 that don't have either. That means tons of Georgians lack access to care, in which they either have to drive hours to get what they need, or they just don't get what they need at all. So this bill also has a huge workforce section that looks to cancel loans for students. If any of you are interested, that when you go in to get your degree and you can commit to working in rural Georgia, where we see these huge workforce shortages, you will get a cancelable loan, which really incentivizes people to look to go into this field. There's a lot of depth in this bill. It is 80 pages, and we have a lot of great information sheets for you to share. One thing I will share that's huge about my job is getting people involved. And being a young professional, I'm pretty familiar with social media and reaching out and communications in that style. So I would love to encourage you all to continue to look on the Nami, Georgia Facebook, and I'm going to use this moment to plug it. We need you to reach out to your senators and your legislators, specifically the lieutenant governor. I just dropped a link in the chat, and that is going to give you kind of this pre-populated email that you'll enter your zip code in, and it will be sent to your senator. And so that's one of our biggest pushes, really getting our membership and those involved in NAMI and MHA to use their voice and educate the legislators so that we can see policy changes. And I'll throw it over to Madison to talk more about programming and how we incorporate all that.
Yeah, thanks, Miriam. I let her talk about the bill because she sounds way smarter than me when she does it. And so that was awesome. And I'll be brief, Emily, because I know that we are coming up on our time. We have a lot of programs at MHA and NAMI that really incorporate kind of wellness for students, including at MHA, we have our LEAP program, which is Leadership, Empowerment, and Access program that does financial literacy, career development, really just helping those that struggle with mental illness, but also just who are striving for mental wellness, work through the system that is the school system or being a young adult in Georgia. So you can check out information about that program on our page as well, and I'll drop that in the chat. And then our final program coming up is next Monday night. We're going to have our first Student Advocacy Council at MHA. And so if you want to hear a little bit more about how to get involved on the advocacy side, how to work with Miriam and I and do what we do, as well as kind of really how to push your own student advocacy initiatives, I would love for you to join us. So I'll drop the registration for that as well.
Thank you both so much. And like I said, it's been a pleasure working with you both with the Georgia Mental Health Policy Partnership. And if anybody is interested in that work, we will make sure we get some links and contact information in the follow-up document. So next we are going, like Madison referenced, we're going to hear from Jewel Gooding, the Executive Director of Silence the Shame.
Hey, oh, sorry, I just realized I was on my other one.
There we go. Okay, all set.
Awesome. So hello, everyone. My name is Jewel Gooding. I am the Executive Director for Silence the Shame. Are you going to move the slides for me? Emily, thank you. All right, so tell you a little bit about us. We are an education awareness nonprofit organization. We were established in 2017. We received our 501c3. We are founded by music veteran executive Shanti Das. She utilizes her platform in order to engage vulnerable communities and to share information in regards to mental health and wellness and to promote suicide prevention overall. We work to reduce the health disparities and improve rates of suicide among Black, Indigenous, people of color, as well as the LGBTQ, older adults, rural communities is what we consider when we think about mental vulnerable communities. Next slide. Next slide, sorry. All right, so how do we work? Fairly new organization, but we have really burst into the community. And just to make reference, we are not just here in Georgia. We are a national organization, but we are based here in Georgia. And we do a lot of our work right here, particularly now with the pandemic kind of grounding a lot of us. So this is where we have done a lot of investments and works, but we also work in other states such as California, DC, New York. Today, I'm actually in Texas. So we are going to be working on Texas Southern University's campus, and we'll talk a little bit about our College Ambassadors program. But we have our community outreach programs, which includes like our community conversations. I'm sorry, thank you. Our Sunday dinners that we will have, and those are civic engagement dinners. We have our No Reservations Needed, which is outreach programs, and we have a few mental health campaigns as well. For our mental wellness, we have our community conversations, our wellness training, and then for our youth, we have our wellness clinics. This year, we're going to be partnering with the Atlanta Hawks in order to offer our first youth wellness clinic. And then we are doing our college ambassador program. And then we also have digital content. We look at the leveraging of technology and all of those different ways to connect with people differently, just so we can have more of a global footprint here throughout the world. We have our depression docuseries where we work with young people, and we also have a Silence to Shame podcast, and we host a suicide awareness summit as well. And we work very well with strategic partners. We are a very small group, so we only work as well as our relationships that we have in our community. So we make sure that we are very strategic in how we connect with people and making sure that we can spread the message of mental wealth. Next slide, please. So our community conversations is an opportunity for us to talk about some very complex topics when we talk about trauma, suicide, social determinants of health and mental health, and really having equity experts really come in and talk about some of those challenges, and really being open and sharing. We measure just the impact of what those conversations can have, and ensuring that we can eliminate the stigma that is associated with mental illness. Next slide. Our youth mental wellness are what we call our COPE clinic, which is community outreach and practice effort. This is just an opportunity to engage students differently. This year, we're going to be focused on youth between the ages of 13 to 15 years old. We just hosted a fireside chat with recording artist Chloe Bailey and Atlanta Hawks Trey Young. So just to really talk about mental health, and we utilize this type of opportunity of using sports and music as a way to intersect with students, to find a different approach in talking about mental health and to help them to find ways to seek help-seeking behaviors. We will be hosting our in-person clinic on May 7th, where we will have another in-person fireside chat. We will have some wellness activities, and we will sponsor a lunch for young people and some breakout sessions so that they can have a better idea about mental health and wellness and provide with them the resources and the tools they would need to access help or support in their community. Next slide. We also have our community and workplace wellness trainings. We were supported through Sony Music Group Social Justice Fund in order to support the Soundtrack of Mental Health. And the Soundtrack of Mental Health is a unique tie-in to mental health education, as well as lived experience and video content from our Heal from the Experts. So we partner with different folks across the nation and in providing that expertise, but to also give people a different approach in how they're understanding mental health and what it looks like in their workplace on a day-to-day. Next slide. And then our college ambassador program, as I mentioned today, we're here in Houston for Texas Southern University, but we did a event for Clark Atlanta University where we worked with actress Keisha Knight Pulliam, and Dr. Izzard is one of our famous, what we call with Nami, Georgia as well. But she came in and did a conversation with our Shanti Das and really just connecting with students. It's about really helping them right now. It is a critical point. I think you all talked about so far, and recognizing where students are really struggling. So finding a way for them to be more open, to access their services that they have on campus, but to also be aware of services outside of their campus so they do not have to struggle and suffer in silence. Next slide. And then we have our community outreach programs, and we have our Silence to Shame Sunday dinners. So I'm going to do a shameless plug that we are going to be hosting a Sunday dinner on May 1st, and we're actually looking for family members who would be interested in serving in that participation. And what our Sunday dinners are just an intimate guided discussion where we can sit down, talk about some of those complex subjects, but using the dinner table as a way to feel more comfortable in really sharing your experiences. We also, again, talked about our Silence to Shame podcast. We host about 20 episodes, 20 to 30 episodes annually. And then we host our self-care Saturdays, where we have at least once a month where we engage the community to participate in wellness activities. That could be cardio, fitness, yoga, meditation. We can do it virtually as well as in person. We partner with community organizations to offer self-care Saturdays on their events. But we also do things such as cooking demonstrations, and I think we just did a paint party. So lots of different things in order for you to prioritize your self-care. Next slide. And then our community outreach initiatives. We are super excited. We just was at the Capitol with Senator Tanya Anderson, who helped us to sign a resolution to designate May 1st as Black Children Mental Health Awareness Day. So very excited. You can actually visit our website if you want to sign up. We are trying to make this go federal. So the more attention and support that we can get in order to bring awareness to the rising rates of suicide among Black youth, but also to bring some reflection on the lack of funding for Black researchers in order to provide those specific interventions to support those Black youth. We host our National Silence to Shame Day. It was inaugural in our calendar of events, or recognized by the calendar of events as National Silence to Shame Day on May 5th. Another opportunity for you again to engage in opportunity to share information, education around awareness. We just started a Silence to Shame teen Instagram account. So we will be looking for teens to really promote and support how they can silence the shame and be more open about their mental wellness. We will be hosting My Life is a Gift Suicide Awareness Summit. Our focus this year will be on youth and their families, where we're supporting those in the community. This will be held September 14th at the Gathering Spot. So more information about that will be available for you all as well. And then every year we do a No Reservations Needed. This initiative was originally created by Shanti Das in really trying to give back to the community. That has since then been adopted by the organization, where we continue to prioritize those social determinants of health, and we think about poverty as a way to connect back to the community and promote mental health overall. Next slide. And that's us. So if you all can follow us, pull out those phones right now and follow us on Instagram. I know you guys are already scrolling because you got a little bored. It's okay. It's all right. So if you want to follow us, or tell your young people to also follow us on Silence to Shame Teens, it's just an opportunity for them to get connected to the different work they are doing. We're also working in partnership with several other groups at Georgia for the Free Your Fields campaign. So you'll also learn about more information in regards to that and spreading some information overall. And yes, I will drop my contact information in the chat, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to send me an email. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Joel. And thank you so much to all of our presenters. We're getting a lot of comments in the chat saying how rich the information was, and we're so grateful to call all of you partners and stakeholders. I'd also like to say a quick thank you to from our staff, Neha Khanna. She's been instrumental in putting the agenda together today, as well as several past agendas, and she's just so thoughtful in putting these together. And so we definitely want to give her some attention, and our staff, Catherine, who helps us host these meetings, and then our board, who's constantly introducing us to all of you and letting us know about some of the great work that's being done across the state. Our next couple of meetings, we're going to focus on some of the work our regional partners are doing, which if you're curious about our regional partnerships, go to our website, resilientga.org, and you can get a snapshot of what our partners are doing, and we'll give an update in the near future. Lastly, many of you may have seen, we've created a web page that has all of our general meeting information on it. So after our meeting today, we'll start to answer all of the questions that were in the chat today, put together a resource list. We'll send those out to you through an email, but then we also post those on that web page. So the web page never changes, and you can go to it at any time to get an invite to our next meeting, to see the recordings from our last meeting, and to gather some of the great resources that you heard today. So thank you for joining us. We look forward to you joining again in the near future, and we will be sending out information about our next general meeting soon. Have a good afternoon.